I also got to put that question to Subramanian Swamy, who is the victorious petitioner in the case today, joining me from Delhi. Thank you very much. Congratulations. It appears to be a major victory for you, Mr. Subramanian Swamy. Even your worst critics are going to have to admit that. And also tonight, Vinod Sharma, senior journalist with the Hindustan Times political editor. Thank you very much. Vikas Singh, former additional solicitor general. I'm also joined by TSR Subramaniam, former cabinet secretary, joining us from our Delhi office. And Ravi Shankar Prasad of the BJP will be joining us in some time. Now, Mr. Swamy, I don't want to take away from from the satisfaction of a well-deserved victory in court. But I'm very interested in knowing your reaction to how the Prime Minister's office is looking at it. The Prime Minister's office actually says that the Prime Minister has been vindicated while appreciating the onerous duties of his office. The judges have completely vindicated Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. What do you think, Mr. Swamy?
Well, vindication is a word that the court didn't use, and I don't think any sensible person would use. The fact of the matter is that all that I can say based on the record submitted by the Prime Minister's office upon notice being issued by the Supreme Court on my petition was that every letter I wrote to the Prime Minister, he dutifully forwarded it to the officials, saying that's a serious matter, please advise. And the advice invariably came each time saying there's no need to reply. And finally, they made him commit mistakes such as referring the matter to the CBI and saying that we have to await the CBI, which is against the principles of giving sanction. So the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister has not been vindicated, but the Prime Minister is exonerated. That's all I can say. Mr.
Subramanian, so let's not look at this semantically. I'm asking you tonight, why, to put it simply, what is the big deal about this? It could have been, Mr. Subramanian Swamy, that nobody actually intended not to look at your complaint, but you were an individual citizen, a private citizen. The government cannot waste its time looking into the applications of so many private citizens. And 1 minute, allow me to complete. And some functionary in the Prime Minister's office, without the slightest of motive, reason, political reason, whether he likes Raja, doesn't like Raja under political, somebody just forgot to look at this file. So that's it. So what is the big thing?
That's not correct.
Why?
That's not correct. The files, the documents with the Supreme Court do not show that. They do show that at the very highest level, the Principal Private Secretary, Mr. T.K. Nair, the then Joint Secretary Pulok Chatterjee, and now the Principal Secretary, they all had a look at it. They passed comments on it. It's all there on the files.
Sir, the Supreme Court says...
No. May I please complete?
Yes, sir.
The Supreme Court, in fact, has said that it doesn't matter who gives the complaint. It must receive full attention, whether it is the Prime Minister or anybody else. So to say that any private person, I'm not a private person. I've been a minister. I've been elected to Parliament 5 times.
Sure you are.
And the length and the breadth of the country knows who I am.
Sure you are.
Where's the question?
I'm playing devil's advocate. Corruption. I have the difficult job of trying to play devil's advocate with you.
But you don't have to become the devil himself. You see, the fact of the matter is...
Mr. Swamy.
The fact of the matter is that the Supreme Court has now said every citizen has a right to...
I know they have said that.
And it must be heard.
I know they have said that, and one must, in fact, salute the Supreme Court of India for passing a verdict which is going to make it impossible for any person who is accused of corruption to turn a blind eye and imagine that the citizens of this country have no right to question him. But before I go to the other panelists, Mr. Subramanian Swamy, I must ask you, I do not think you are completely right, sir, with all respect, because the court goes on to say, page number 42 of the verdict says, unfortunately, those who were expected to give proper advice to respondent number 1, that's the Prime Minister, I presume, and place full facts and legal position failed to do so. Had the Prime Minister been apprised of the factual and legal position, he would not have allowed the matter to linger, which means there is no political reason not to respond to Subramanian Swamy. It's a simple bureaucratic lapse, Mr. Swamy, which you must not look at. There are no motives behind this bureaucratic lapse.
No, there is a motive because Raja had other patrons besides, the Prime Minister was not his patron, and the way he replied to the Prime Minister on 2nd November makes it quite clear. The fact of the matter is the officials also never felt any loyalty to the Prime Minister. They were appointed by other people. And therefore, they all functioned as if the Prime Minister didn't amount to very much.
No,
and the Prime Minister, unfortunately, lumped it all.
No, then you see, can the Prime Minister separate himself from the PMO? Can the PM be absolved all responsibility from the inaction of
Well, now is the time for the Prime Minister to prove that he is not going to separate. He should sack all those officials. Otherwise, I will move a petition for malfeasance in office against these officials.
Subramanian Swamy, having won in the Supreme Court today, is raising the stakes in this battle. Ravi Shankar Prasad, you targeted the Prime Minister. But before I come to you, Vinod Sharma and Vikas Singh, Ravi Shankar Prasad, have you been fair to the Prime Minister? But the Prime Minister's office is in fact celebrating the fact. The note of the Prime Minister's office is celebrating the fact that the Prime Minister has been vindicated. Why are you targeting the Prime Minister?
Arnav, there is something called political escapism. And if the PMO indeed is celebrating, I can only say a copybook case of political escapism. Don't forget the context of it, Arnav. Dr. Swamy goes to the Prime Minister,
Yes.
files an application.
Yes.
For 16 months, no decision is taken.
Yes.
The Prime Minister talks of compulsion of coalition politics.
No.
Also gives certificate of innocence to Mr. Raja inside and outside the Parliament. And the CBI go in its own place. Now, I am very happy you have read page 42,
41.
paragraph 33 of the judgment.
Yes, yes.
Page 42, Arnav Goswami. I have got the judgment with you.
Sir, yes,
Please
42.
do your homework well.
I correct myself, 42.
Now, yes, at page 42, the court says the officers of PMO and the Law Ministry were required to apprise the Prime Minister
Yes,
about the seriousness of the offence.
yes,
And also the direction of the Vineet Narayan that sanction must be given in 3 months' time.
Yes.
They failed to do so.
yes.
The Prime Minister of India is supposed to lead the nation. Here is a case, he is not able to lead his own officers.
Because he was misled. Because he was misled.
Please, Arnav, just 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. Therefore, under the Prime Minister, 2G happens, his telecom minister misleads him. Commonwealth happens, his Minister of Sports or other people mislead him.
Yes.
And in the worst scandal of century of independent India, his PMO officers mislead him.
Yes, but that's what the court says.
The previous part of the judgment, the court said it's not Ravi Shankar or Arnav saying. It is the finding of the court.
Yeah, but you disbelieve the court.
The PMO, please, Arnav Goswami, the inference I only draw from it is a clear indictment of the Prime Minister's office.
Okay.
And if it is a case of indictment of the Prime Minister's office, then kindly put it in sync. The Prime Minister of India is an honest man.
Sir.
The most worst scandals of India are happening right under him.
Sir,
and he is saying, I did not know.
Sir, you are
only in confirmation of that.
Sir, you are
Therefore, I say, it is a clearly indictment of the functioning of the Prime Minister's office.
You are all legal luminaries. I am not.
The head is the Prime Minister.
You are legal luminaries. I am not. You are having fun at my expense, Subramanian Swamy and Ravi Shankar Prasad. But I have, despite my complete ignorance of the subject, gone through this verdict, sir. And I find that the Supreme Court has cited various judgments while demolishing the opinion of the Ministry of Law and Justice, then headed by Veerappa Moily, not by Prime Minister, tendered on February 8, 2010 on this matter. Are we to believe that the Law Ministry gave an incorrect opinion to the Prime Minister's office? Who should be pulled up, the Law Minister or the Prime Minister? Vinod Sharma, I want you to come into the debate. The first two participants have slammed the Prime Minister. Actually, not Subramanian Swamy has not slammed the Prime Minister. Ravi Shankar Prasad undisputably has. Mr. Sharma.
Well, I think that obviously Ravi has a lot of things to say politically. But I would go along with Dr. Swamy's version that the court has exonerated the Prime Minister in this matter. Well, of course, there are these elements of the Prime Minister defending a Raja in Parliament and all. But that is the political spin which the BJP as an opposition party has a right to give. You know, after all these inferences and interpretations that I hear of the court judgment, I personally feel, and this is just an aside, that the Supreme Court must appoint a spokesperson who interprets correctly the import and the implication of the court judgments to the people and to the media on a regular basis. Because if if individuals are going to come up with their interpretation of the judgments,
no, sir,
then I think the public opinion would be poorer rather than being richer.
No, sir.
It is a case where public opinion needs to be empowered.
Sir,
because it is public which has been empowered by this judgment. That today a private person can move an application for the investigation and prosecution of people at high places.
Yes.
Now what are the implications of this? We have to tell them correctly.
What's wrong with that?
But in my view, you see, that's what it is. So what I'm saying is that we should hear it from the mouth of a court spokesperson. It's a huge judgment which should be correctly interpreted through the media for the people. And this is not happening because there are varied interpretations. The government has its own interpretation, the opposition has its own interpretation, and the petitioner, Dr. Swamy, who's in the middle of this celebration, and I must compliment him for the good work that he has done in this regard, that he has a different interpretation.
No, what is wrong with Subramanian Swamy's interpretation? Because the implications of this verdict, I understand, is that any individual can appeal for sanction to prosecute and the government has to respond within 4 months, which means no one has to prove their locus standi in such a request for sanction. So it is a victory for the common man, the Aam Aadmi. Is that a wrong interpretation?
No, that's the right interpretation. But we are talking about the Prime Minister. Because the BJP has gone for the Prime Minister's jugular after this judgment.
Yes.
And BJP is saying that this amounts to the indictment of the functioning of the Prime Minister. Now, I wonder whether this is an indictment because even Mr. Soli Sorabji said in a different program that it is at best a criticism of the Prime Minister's office and not an indictment even of the Prime Minister's office.
Yes, so I understand your position. I want Ravi Shankar Prasad to respond. Here's a situation where the CBI has been criticized for not doing anything. PMO officials have been criticized for not doing anything. Law Ministry has been criticized for not doing anything. But the Prime Minister did not know, and hence the Prime Minister is being exonerated. Ravi Shankar Prasad, quick response from you to that interpretation. You're being criticized for taking on the Prime Minister directly. The Prime Minister is not responsible is the point made to you by Vinod Sharma tonight. Mr. Subramaniam, right to you after that.
Well, if we are not doing to the satisfaction of my very great friend Vinod Sharma, I leave it to him to interpret the judgment as a noble spokesperson of the enlightened mind. Or not, three issues emerge out of this judgment. First and foremost, any individual citizen of India can put the machinery of law into action in case there is prima facie evidence of corruption against a public servant. The whole question of locus standi, as rightly pointed out, goes. Second, when the question of sanction comes, no one can claim immunity of unlimited period. You have to take a call within 3 months, as Vineet Narayan's judgment has held. They have reiterated that. If you want to consult someone, please indicate your confusion which you want to be clarified. For 1 month more, that clarity has to come from a law officer or Attorney General. The third, on the facts of this case, they have noted in detail as to how the whole thing was deliberately delayed. How the file was sent to 2G, to the telecom minister, and Mr. Raja wrote back that all the licenses have been granted properly.
Sir, I wish to interrupt.
Only one line. Only one line, let me tell you. What is my take? Why I said what I said, and I hold on to that view. That the country's public revenue is being looted, the Prime Minister does not know. The Law Ministry is misleading, the Prime Minister does not know. The Prime Minister's office is not giving him correct advice in spite of serious investigation. The Prime Minister is keeping quiet. The Prime Minister is the leader of the government. The Prime Minister is the leader of the country. And if the Prime Minister is not able to control,
but they're saying
not a case.
The charge is
a clear case of moral responsibility comes from the Prime Minister.
The charge is not that the Prime Minister. The charge is not that the Prime Minister didn't do anything. The charge is that the Prime Minister did not know. The whole point is the Prime Minister did not know. It was the CBI, the Law Ministry, the PMO officials who chose to do nothing unwillingly. No, here I have a counter question for you. Counter question for you, sir.
Let me reply here.
In Madhya Pradesh.
The officers the officers of the Prime Minister's office keep the PM in the dark.
Yes, why not?
Let me give a clear example here. If Times Now representative,
yes,
in a serious matter does not bring the fact to the knowledge of Arnav Goswami,
yes,
and it has serious implication Arnav Goswami, you will also have accountability.
Thank you for the glorious comparison.
Constitutionally speaking.
Thank you for the glorious comparison and an attempt to deflect my question, which Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, in all earnestness, I have seen through.
The Prime Minister is the head of the government.
Sure.
The Prime Minister should know everything.
Sure.
And if the PMO is keeping him in the dark, I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Mr. It's a clear case of indictment of the functioning of the Prime Minister.
Far from gloating at the glorious comparison made by Ravi Shankar Prasad, I will continue to push one question to you. A question is, in the BJP ruled state of Madhya Pradesh, the sanction to prosecute 10 public servants has been pending for months, not years. This is a practice that all your state governments continue to follow, sir. That is also a point. My question to TSR Subramaniam is tonight. To TSR Subramaniam. 1 minute, sir. To TSR Subramaniam, is the BJP right in targeting the Prime Minister?
Arnav, you are asking the wrong person. I am not a political commentator. I would not like to get into this debate. But clearly, this judgment is a stinging indictment of the system. I am not talking of A or B or C, and rightly so. Now, how has this happened? Let us go back to very quickly to the brief history. The history has been that Raja's case, rightly, has become a very, very major case.
Yes.
Case of the century, case of the etc., etc. Thanks to CAG, thanks to your channel, thanks to you, thanks to Subramanian Swamy, thanks to a number of people, it has suddenly emerged. Now, what has happened in Raja's case? Deliberate delay in giving approval.
Yes.
Has happened in hundreds of cases.
Huh?
They have section 197 of the CRPC has been a dead letter till now. Yes. Has not been used at all. Nobody could go to court because approval would never come. The single directive which requires CBI to get approval, you just check out. I have not checked out lately. There are hundreds of cases pending. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, approval does not come for sanction. So, I see from this a very important development, a landmark development. And that is this, that public servants will be accountable. When credible evidence, prima facie evidence is available, they shall be investigated, they shall be looked into and then prosecuted. And this is now an order of the Supreme Court.
No,
it does not leave it now anymore to the discretion of the administration. It now says that these things shall happen. And earlier, on the ground that there was no time limit, the time limit became 50 years.
No, fine.
Now there's a time limit. I hope the government will now bring a law, bring whatever it is, amendments to whatever it is, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Sure. Mr. Subramaniam, let me privately share with you that having spoke to a number of politicians today, none of whom want to speak on record to Times Now, they are all petrified. They say now anybody can come out with any request, any person will say, Subramanian Swamy is smiling because they say Subramanian Swamy has opened a Pandora's box. Now any person will bring a sanction to prosecute against ministers, media will do a story and you'll say the person has to resign. No, there is that view. Am I wrong in expressing that view? Vikas Singh, let's take a contrary view. Vikas Singh, former Additional Solicitor General, what is your take? Vikas Singh, what's your take?
I'll tell you, Arnav, I'll tell you on the entire debate, as far as the PMO not informing the Prime Minister, because of which the Prime Minister gets exonerated, I don't agree with this theory. I mean, ultimately, if the head of the office is not aware of what is happening within his office, then you can't say that he is not responsible and the petty officials in that office only are to blame. But I have a different perspective on this matter. Traditionally, if you see, the prosecution always used to seek sanction. So it's only the prosecution file which used to go to the state government or the central government for sanction.
Yes.
And there was no time limit prescribed either under the CRPC or under the IPC or the Prevention of Corruption Act of within how much time the sanction is to be granted. Now what this judgment is extremely salutary is fixing a time limit.
Yes.
Normally this time limit, in my understanding, should have applied to an application made by the prosecution. But they have enlarged it to even apply to an application made by a private individual. I have not read the judgment. I was travelling today, but that's what I hear from from the channels. Now, this is something which has been done for the first time by the Supreme Court. So it will have, you can't fix a time limit today and say that 16 months that passed in the what has already gone by, that is a delay which is to be seen in terms of this judgment. Now, this judgment, if supposing this judgment had come as far as the time limit is concerned, say 2-3 years back, And if then Raja's file had been kept pending, definitely the Prime Minister's office would have to be indicted.
No, sir,
but here is a case where the time limit is being for the first time in this case now.
So what's wrong?
And a private person is being permitted
No, that's not correct.
No, that's
person is being permitted to
Subramanian Swamy views that you're not correct.
You can't,
Mr. Swamy, yes.
Yes, not correct, because the Vineet Narayan case had already laid down 3 months' time.
No, for a private person.
CVC
that
in its
was not for a
website
private
had put
person.
it out. The government
Mr.
took
Swamy,
the excuse that this is only applied to civil servants, and the Supreme Court has now struck that down. They said no, it applies to everybody. The government was deliberately using this argument, but the Vineet Narayan case is absolutely clear.
Vineet Narayan was dealing with a case where the prosecution was seeking sanction. It is not a case. Vineet Narayan is not an authority for the proposition that even if a private person goes seeking sanction...
But the wording of the judgment is... I'm sorry, you have not... you don't remember the wording of the judgment. The wording of the Justice Verma made it very clear. All sanction applications should be decided within 3 months.
Yeah, but
it is there. You can see paragraph 57.
Sir, I have the Vineet Narayan judgment.
I'm sorry,
Gentlemen.
these are the excuses that congressmen are constantly trotting out. That is what the Supreme Court has exposed today.
So what happened?
And let me tell you also that the real head of the PMO is not the Prime Minister but Ms. Sonia Gandhi.
No, one second. We are making it completely political. The question is this. In this particular, I want to understand, Vikas Singh, what your problem is. Because in this case, October 21st, 2009, the CBI registered a case against some unknown persons. After that, they did nothing. Even the Supreme Court has observed today, Subramanian Swamy can correct me, that only when the court intervened, then something happened. Now, in this great country of ours, Vikas Singh, there are incidents of corruption that are not 2G. All people don't have the resources that Mr. Subramanian Swamy has or the acumen to take this matter to court. They don't want to fight judicial cases. They feel harassed by the law. The media does not report every case. Today's judgment brings in some sense of accountability. I don't understand, Mr. Vikas Singh, how you can have any problem with that.
No, I don't have any problem. Sorry, Arnab, you didn't get me.
Arnab,
What
I want to come in for a minute.
is that CBI, if you remember the CBI of 2009, I don't want to name people who are at the helm of CBI, but CBI of 2009 was a totally committed CBI. 2009, CBI would do whatever the government wanted it to do. So CBI has not been functioning independently in this country. So the courts have rightly intervened. I'm saying something else. I'm saying the proposition that a private person's seeking sanction to be also decided within 4 months or 3 months, and if not decided will be a deemed sanction, has been decided only in this case. If the CBI had done its job properly, the CBI hasn't sought sanction in 2009 itself.
Well, the CBI
they are not
hasn't
doing their job.
So CBI hasn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So CBI is a committed CBI to quite a large extent, and they do whatever the masters want them to do. And that's why I've always been advocating that the CBI should be made independent. You should have a director appointed by a committee which should not have any governmental control. That's very important. Today, if you have a committed CBI, then this is what is going to happen.
So what is a committed CBI? What is an uncommitted CBI? What is an overcommitted CBI or undercommitted CBI is a subjective matter. There will be some people who will say today the CBI is functioning brilliantly. You may have a problem with it. But on the bigger issue, Ravi Shankar Prasad, will you tomorrow say you come to power and a private citizen comes, not Subramanian Swamy, XYZ comes to you and says that, you know, there is an allegation of corruption against one of your ministers, and there is a media report, because in Mr. Subramanian Swamy also refers to a media report. There is a media report which is unchallenged, and therefore there is this corruption, and there are some documents that I have, by the way, which prove some of these allegations against corruption. Will you therefore, in 3 months, regardless of your coalition compulsions, throw that minister out? Or will you change your position then?
Although I can give you a reply by a direct evidence. When Mr. Bajpayee was the Prime Minister in the year 1998, when we lost by 1 vote, Mr. Bhutta Singh was supporting the government.
Yes.
He was charge-sheeted in an earlier case, not to the NDA regime, of corruption. And Bajpayee ji asked him to resign. And we lost 98 government by 1 vote. Therefore, we have shown what we have done. In this case, the Supreme Court has clearly stated that you have to apply your mind. You can also say yes, you can say no. You cannot keep on sitting. Now, yes, if our government is in power, as you have done in the past, If positive evidence is there disclosing prima facie offense, why not?
Oh.
That's what the court says.
Okay.
Or no, let me just say one thing more. That's very important. Now, when Mr. Raja ceased to be a minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh was no more his sanctioning authority. He, being a member of Lok Sabha, the Speaker of Lok Sabha gave sanction immediately.
No, 1 second.
Why this?
No, 1 second.
There was no this judgment at that point in time?
Mr. Prasad.
No, please, this is very important. Please,
There's a counter to your argument, Mr.
You're
Prasad.
interrupting me too much. Have a little patience.
I'll keep my patience.
If prima facie case was there, without this judgment, the Honorable Speaker of Lok Sabha, after perusing all the documents, gave sanction to the CBI. Thereafter, the whole charge sheet has been filed and even charges have been framed. That's point number one. This only reinforces one thing. But for aggressive campaign by media, notably Arnab Goswami and Times Now, assertive opposition inside and outside the parliament, and monitoring by the court, Dr. Manmohan Singh government would not have taken any action in 2G cases.
Prasad,
and evidence after evidence only is indicating that.
Mr. Prasad, Mr. Prasad, at the risk of your saying once again, I don't have patience, which frankly I am trying to have, but I was one argument which makes me believe that your entire argument will fall apart. And that argument is this, that the Lokpal bill, which you are so dead against, Mr. Prasad, which you have blocked, Mr. Prasad, for reasons of your own, because you don't want, as the government says, your state governments to have accountability that you seek at the centre for obvious reasons right now. Section 23 of the Lokpal bill takes away the sanction through prosecution. It just does away with it. It completely the government says we are so sincere, we don't even want to give sanction. Subramanian Swamy does not have to go to court in the future. What more can we do?
Arnab Goswami, first of all, that is a completely wrong allegation. We are opposing Lokpal. We are saying opposition is make CBI more autonomous. We are saying take out appointment power of Lokpal from the control of the government. And yes, on the federal power, we don't want states try to be divested.
Yeah.
That is a very sweeping comment you are making today. You have got the right to castigate me, but at least castigate me on proper facts. We are one in having an effective Lokpal, including doing away with the sanction.
Other part of the question, which you have not chosen not to address, Section 23 takes away with the sanction to prosecute public servants. Subramanian Swamy does not have to go to court. It's all automatic.
Arnab Goswami, I said taking away the power of sanction. Therefore, the Lokpal bill is supported by BJP in the all-party meeting. We have always said take out the sanctioning power under Section 197 of the CRPC.
Vinod Sharma, the BJP says.
Today you have not done your homework well. Today I am sorry to say you have not done your homework well, Arnab Goswami.
As per Section 23, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, the fact is that these are all matters of perception. Question here is this. Vinod Sharma, Ravi Shankar Prasad, besides saying I have not done my homework, also says today that we have committed the ultimate sacrifice of parting ways with Mr. Bhutta Singh. Mr. Prasad, Mr. Vinod Sharma.
Well, I don't want to go into it because, I expect Ravi to at times speak like a lawyer. And when I expect him to speak like a lawyer, he tends to speak like the spokesperson of the BJP. But without locking horns with Ravi, who's a good friend, I would like to say that the implications of this judgment are two. One, that you have to take a decision on the application against a public functionary, whether either you accept the charges or you reject the application. In the event of application being rejected by the competent authority, people will still have to go to court if they persist with their charges. And secondly, this should be applauded, this judgment should be applauded by political parties across the spectrum, because this will put an end to political instability, which is caused by recalcitrant allies who do not want to see their ministers prosecuted. And the Prime Minister, when he met the television journalists, including you, had talked about political compulsions.
Yes.
Those political compulsions shall cease to exist now because there'd be a law in place, and even if there is not a law in place, the court judgment is a case law, which mandates that you have to grant prosecution sanction even on a private complaint against a minister who is found to be on the wrong. So I think that it is something which everybody should be welcoming, and thanks to the effort of Dr. Swamy, and rather than sort of engaging in this slanging match, that whether it is an indictment of the PM or the PMO or whether who did what during his tenure, it is of no use. I mean, one should look forward as to how do you build upon this judgment of the court to have a system where polity will become cleaner, where governance will become more transparent and fair.
We hope we are moving towards an ideal world. I'm not sure if it will happen in 2012 alone. Last question will be for Subramanian Swamy, the penultimate question for TSR Subramaniam. You see big things happening this week in the 2G case, Mr. Subramaniam. Major things happening in the other court as well, the Chidambaram case, there's a lot happening this week. And the government battling Army Chief Age Rao on the one side, the ISRO deal on the other, and now this. What's it doing to the image?
No, don't mix up the issues.
Overall,
the ISRO deal and the Army Chief deal are individual cases. They're not system cases. So don't mix up policy issues with these, number one.
Okay.
Number two, I'm not a soothsayer. Probably Subramanian Swamy would have a better idea as to what is going to happen than I do have. But what I see is this, that in this channel a year and a half back, on CWG, 2G, I was highly skeptical. Like the 100 earlier scams, it will all be covered up in mud and be buried for eternity. Yes. Now we are in a totally different wicket. Yes, we've got a cabinet minister in jail, we've got chief ministers leaving office. Churning is taking place.
Churn is happening.
Anna Hazare, who a lot of people are trying to bury him alive. But we've got Anna Hazare. I think churning is taking place. Where it will go, where it will end, I don't know. It's going to be this week or next.
Well,
my final view is, if this country has to survive as a democracy, this churning has to continue continuously for the next 5 years. We've got to clean up the system, otherwise our future is in doubt.
This truth has a horrible habit of coming out, you know. We never thought that the Devas ISRO deal, when Times Now first reported the case, everyone they had press conferences today, everything being reported on Times Now is absolute rubbish. And today that scam has come back on its own, out of its own momentum, and maybe it's pent up inertia, I don't know what. Last question to Subramanian Swamy is, Mr. Swamy, who is your target? Your target, you're very soft to the Prime Minister. You are very happy, saying that the Prime Minister has been exonerated. It appears that your singular target is Mr. Chidambaram. Your singular focus, your singular target is not even Mr. Raja.
When I was prosecuting Mr. Raja, Karunanidhi said that because I'm a Brahmin and Raja is a Dalit, therefore I am targeting him. Similarly, same thing with Kannimozhi. They said I'm anti-woman, I'm against Jayalalitha, I'm against this, I'm against Sonia Gandhi, all that. Now that's an easy thing to say. But the fact is that as far as Chidambaram is concerned, the documents clearly show that he and Raja together decided, and this the Prime Minister said it on the floor of Parliament. There's nothing I could do. These two ministers were empowered by the NDA government, the finance minister and the telecom minister, and they, in this case, Mr. Chidambaram and Mr. Raja, together came and told me that they have decided, and I accepted it. This is therefore the case is not only prima facie correct, it is actually good enough to convict Mr. Chidambaram.
Well, Mr. Subramanian Swamy, we follow what happens in court. The truth has this terrible habit of rising to the surface, and we support that habit wholeheartedly. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on debate number 1 on the News Hour tonight. Thank you very much.